I froze when my friend's mom stepped out in just a towel. You ever have a moment that rewires your brain? Not some dramatic explosion, just a quiet second, a hallway, steam, a towel, and a woman who looked at you like she wasn't sure whether to scream or stare. That was me, Ethan, 25, Portland escapee. I came to this city to start fresh. I didn't expect the fresh start to involve her. Her Monica Turner, my roommate's mom. Blonde, early 40s. Graceful in a way that made time feel slower around her. I wasn't even supposed to be there when it happened. Dylan, her son, the guy I barely knew from a co-working space, told me to move into their spare room while he was at work. Said it was no big deal. I believed him. Until the bathroom door creaked open and time froze. She looked at me like I had broken a sacred rule one I didn't even know existed. All I could stammer was, "I'm Ethan." Dylan told me, but the damage was done. She vanished behind the door without another word. I left the house 5 seconds later, heart-pounding, ego-shattered soul hovering somewhere between, what the hell just happened? And did I just ruin my life before it started? That night, I ended up in a cheap motel playing her voice over and over in my head, the way she said, "You're not supposed to be here." Not angry, not terrified, just firm. Like a boundary had been crossed that neither of us asked for. When her text came hours later from a number I didn't even know she had, I nearly dropped my phone. "Hey, it's Dylan's mom. I didn't know you'd be there. He didn't tell me." She could have ignored it, could have told me to get lost, but she didn't. I replied saying I'd leave. She responded with something I didn't expect. "You don't have to. Just let me know next time. It's been a while since I've had to share space with anyone." There it was, that tone again. Not cold, not angry, just lonely. And that loneliness had a gravity of its own, pulling me back toward the very place I had run from hours earlier. The same hallway, the same silence, but this time something in the air was different. The next morning I drove back to Dylan's house slowly, cautiously, like I was approaching a place where gravity might suddenly shift again. The street looked the same. The front yard, the porch, even the door left slightly ajar, all of it untouched. But I wasn't the same. I'd stepped into something delicate, fragile, and I wasn't sure if I was intruding or invited. She said she'd be out, so I packed quietly, no music, no distractions. Just the rustle of a duffel bag and the sound of my own racing thoughts. I was about to walk out again when I saw the note on the table. Neat handwriting, clean loops, no smudges. One line, "You're welcome to stay, just let me know." MT. I stared at it like it might change its meaning if I blinked. It didn't. I put my bag down, stood there for a few seconds, then texted her. "Thanks. I'd like to stay if that's still okay." Her reply came 10 minutes later. "Of course. Let's both just try to communicate a little better next time." That smiley face, it hit me harder than it should have. It was the kind of message that let you exhale after holding your breath all night. Over the next few days, life smoothed itself out like nothing happened, or like we had both silently agreed to pretend it didn't. Dylan was around, but barely. Double shifts, late nights, fast food wrappers, and a girlfriend he never brought home. We existed in parallel roommates by proximity, but not much more. Monica, though, she was different. At first we passed like shadows in the hallway. A nod, a half smile, a polite morning as I made coffee, and she slipped out for her walk. But gradually, a rhythm emerged. Familiarity doesn't need permission, it just happens. One afternoon I was in the kitchen making a sandwich when she walked in barefoot, casual, a glass of water in hand. "Glad someone's using this kitchen," she said, glancing at the cutting board. I laughed. "Dylan mostly lives on energy drinks and frozen burritos." She smirked. "Don't I know it? I think the freezer's half Red Bull at this point." I nodded, finishing my sandwich. "Cooking helps. Makes things feel normal, I guess." She leaned against the counter, her tone shifting slightly. "You've had a rough few years, huh?" I looked up. "Dylan tell you that?" "No," she said, her eyes meeting mine. "You just carry it. Quietly." I didn't respond. "Because what do you say when someone sees past your walls like that? She talked a little more after that about how she used to teach high school English, about her late husband, about how she hadn't really gone back to work since. Books and podcasts, she said with a faint shrug. They fill the silence. That night she texted me again. "Thanks for the talk today. It's nice having someone new around." I replied without thinking. "Same here. You're easy to talk to." That's how it started. Not with a look, not with a touch, but with words. From that point on, we messaged a little more often. Not every hour, not flirty, just present. A funny thought about the terrible sitcom I was watching. A quick, "there's leftover chicken in the fridge if you're hungry." And yeah, once, "Did you eat the last cookie?" Be honest. It was casual, but comforting. One night, Dylan messaged that he was working a double. I was half watching reruns on the couch when Monica came downstairs with a book and a glass of red wine. She paused at the bottom of the stairs. "Mind if I join?" "Of course not," I said, shifting to make room. She sat beside me, not close, not distant. She opened the book, then closed it again. "This show's terrible." "I know," I grinned. "That's why I watch it." We sat there like that, side by side, quiet. At one point, she turned toward me. "It's been a long time since I had someone to talk to in the evening." "Yeah," I said. "Same." She smiled faintly. "Well, I'm glad you're here." That moment held more weight than I expected. Because she didn't say thanks or it's nice, she said I'm glad. And I was too. Days blurred into nights, and the lines between us blurred with them. We weren't avoiding each other, but we weren't chasing anything either. It was more like orbiting. Quiet gravitation. She'd lean on the counter a little longer when we talked. Ask me how my day was and actually wait for the answer. There was no overt flirting. But there was something. A softness. A quiet noticing. Then Dylan went out of town training seminar 4 days. He barely finished his sentence before Monica and I exchanged a brief glance that neither of us knew what to do with. The first night he was gone, I found her reading in the dim light of the living room. She looked up and smiled when I walked in. "Long day?" she asked. "Just trying not to be in your way," I joked. "You're not in my way." And with that, she patted the spot next to her on the couch. I sat. We didn't speak at first. Her fingers played with the edges of her book but never turned a page. I looked at the cover. "Second chances and broken marriages?" I asked. She laughed. "Fiction. Or maybe autobiography." Then she put the book down and said, "I've tried so hard to keep things simple, to not feel anything that might make life harder." My pulse quickened. "But you," she said, "you've made that really hard lately." I didn't speak, just watched the way her fingers folded into each other. Then I said quietly, "I don't want to make your life harder." "I know," she said, "but maybe I want it a little harder. Just for once. We didn't kiss that night. We didn't even touch. But my hand brushed hers and she didn't move it away, and that somehow meant more than anything else could have." The second night it rained. Monica came into the kitchen with 2 mugs. "Chamomile," she said. I couldn't sleep. We sat across from each other, steam rising between us, her eyes reflecting the soft kitchen light. "It used to be like this," she said, "back when Dylan's dad was alive. I'd sit up listening to the rain, wide awake, feeling like I didn't exist." She looked at me then. "You make me feel visible again." I didn't know how to hold that sentence, so I didn't say anything. I just reached across and took her hand. No one had to say what was happening, and no one had to stop it either. The third night Dylan was gone, the air felt different. Maybe it was the rain tapping against the windows, or maybe it was the silence that stretched between us, not awkward, just loaded. The house felt smaller, closer. I was finishing up some work at the kitchen table when Monica walked in holding 2 mugs. "Couldn't sleep again?" I asked. She nodded, setting 1 mug in front of me. "Chamomile again? Don't judge." I smiled. "Never. You're saving my productivity." We sipped in silence for a moment. Then she said, "Rain always messes with my head." She sat across from me, eyes distant. Her voice dropped. "Back when Dylan's dad was still alive, I used to lie awake during nights like this. He'd be snoring and I'd be staring at the ceiling wondering how my life turned out like that, wondering when I disappeared in my own house. She didn't say it bitterly, just matter of fact, like a story she'd told herself too many times to feel the sting anymore. I stayed because I thought I had to, she said, for Dylan, for some illusion of stability. But truthfully, I was lonelier then than I am now. I swallowed hard, unsure whether to speak. She looked up suddenly, meeting my eyes. Do you ever feel invisible, Ethan? Like you've been on mute for so long you start to forget what your own voice sounds like? I nodded slowly. Yeah, I do. You make me feel seen, she said softly. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I didn't. I just held her gaze. Something had shifted, not dramatically, but undeniably. Then she asked, have you thought about this, about us? There was no hesitation. Yes, I said, more than I probably should. She didn't flinch, didn't retreat. Instead, she reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. We stayed like that, quiet, grounded, holding something fragile between us. I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable in your own home, I said. She cut me off with a whisper, I want this. That night, I went upstairs an hour later than usual. I knocked gently. Her voice came through the door. Come in. She was sitting on the edge of the bed in a soft robe, hair tied back, no makeup. Just her. Real, vulnerable, and somehow braver than anyone I'd ever met. I sat next to her. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Our knees touched. I keep thinking about how this ends, she said, how it could explode, how unfair it is to Dylan, to you, to me. It's messy, I said, but it doesn't feel wrong. She looked at me, her voice shaking just a little. It doesn't feel wrong to me either. That's what scares me. We didn't kiss right away. It wasn't heat or lust or impulse. It was stillness, permission. Then she leaned in soft, slow, and I met her halfway. Her lips were warm and uncertain, testing, then deeper. Her hand moved to my cheek, mine to her waist. Our bodies learned a rhythm neither of us had rehearsed, and when we finally let go, it wasn't release. It was recognition. We didn't say much after, just lay in the dark listening to the rain tangled in sheets, skin against skin. I stared at the ceiling and wondered how something so quiet could feel so loud inside me. She whispered, we're insane. Maybe, I replied, but I've never felt more sane. She turned toward me. Promise me something, anything. No one knows. This stays with us. I nodded. You have my word. And I meant it. The days after were strange. Not bad, just charged. Dylan came home like nothing had happened because, to him, nothing had. He asked if anyone had eaten all the cereal, dropped his bag on the floor, and started ranting about his training. Monica and I exchanged one glance the entire day. Just one. It was enough. We kept everything exactly the same on the outside. Friendly, polite, distance measured perfectly in steps and seconds. But in the quiet moments when Dylan was asleep or out, something passed between us. A glance, a brush of fingers, a question unspoken, then slowly answered. She'd knock gently on my door and ask, "You still awake?" Or I'd find her reading in the living room and just sit next to her. Knees almost touching. Silence doing all the work. Some nights she came to me, some nights I went to her. Never loud, never rushed, just stolen time wrapped in warmth and understanding. We were careful, but not because we were ashamed, because it felt sacred. Then came the Saturday afternoon cookout. Dylan invited some coworkers over. The house filled with noise and laughter. I stayed in the background grilling burgers, playing host. Monica floated through the day like a breeze, polite, composed, smiling in all the right places, but not too much. Never too much. I caught her looking at me once through the kitchen window while I handed a beer to one of Dylan's friends. She didn't smile, she just watched me as if checking to make sure I was still ours. I gave her the smallest nod. And it was enough. Later that night, after everyone was gone and Dylan passed out on the couch, I went upstairs. My door was cracked open. She was there, sitting on the edge of my bed in that soft robe again. "I've been thinking," she said as I stepped inside, "about what? How strange this is, you and me, and how normal it feels." I sat beside her. "I think about that too." She looked at me, face bare, honest. "Are you happy here?" "With you?" I asked. She nodded. "Yeah, I am." She exhaled like she'd been holding that breath for years. "I haven't felt this calm in a long time." That night we didn't kiss. We didn't undress. We just talked. About stupid things, childhood memories, songs we couldn't remember the names of, commercials from the 90s that made no sense. It was one of the best nights we ever had. And that's when I knew this wasn't some temporary fix. It wasn't a rebound or a distraction or a scandal. It was something slower, deeper, quietly revolutionary. Weeks passed, then months. We never talked about what we were. We never labeled it, never defined it. Because maybe definitions weren't what we needed. Maybe what we had only worked because it stayed unspoken. But it was real. Monica still read every night. I still overcooked pasta. We still passed each other like normal people during the day. But when Dylan was gone or asleep or out late, she'd knock. Or I would. And every time she'd look at me, I could feel it again. That invisible thread connecting two people who refused to be seen by anyone but each other. One night, curled beside her in the dim lamplight, she looked at me and said something I'll never forget. "You don't need to promise me forever, or explain this to anyone. Just keep showing up. Quiet, honest, yours." I didn't respond. I just pulled her closer. And for the first time in years for both of us, that was enough. It's funny how something that once felt like a collision eventually feels like choreography. Like we'd both learned a dance we never rehearsed but instinctively understood. Monica and I weren't reckless. We weren't delusional. We knew the rules, and we knew how easy it would be to break everything if we weren't careful, but neither of us wanted to destroy anything. We just wanted to exist somewhere quiet, somewhere real. Every day still felt like a balancing act. Around Dylan, I was just the roommate. Sometimes we'd play video games or run errands together. I'd ask about work, and he'd talk about annoying coworkers and crappy vending machine food. Monica, when he was around, kept things tidy like a performance she'd been doing long before I arrived. Her smiles were quieter, her presence subtler. And yet every time we passed in the hallway or exchanged a look over the dinner table, I felt it, the electricity, the anchor, the knowing. There was one night in particular, early spring, when the air still bit at your skin but the days were getting longer. Dylan was out again, likely staying at his girlfriend's, and I was in the kitchen late cleaning up. Monica came in wearing one of Dylan's old college hoodies. She was barefoot. Her hair was damp from a shower. No makeup. She looked like a memory I hadn't lived yet. She didn't speak at first, just leaned against the fridge and watched me load the dishwasher. I glanced over. "You okay?" She nodded. "Yeah. Just thinking." I dried my hands and turned to her. "About this house," she said, her voice low. "How different it feels lately, how full, but in a quiet way." I leaned on the counter beside her. "Is that a good thing?" She looked at me for a long moment. "It's a real thing. I haven't felt that in years. We didn't touch, we didn't kiss, but that conversation lived in the space between us, making the silence feel warm instead of cold. That was the night I realized we were no longer pretending. We had stopped pretending weeks ago, maybe even the moment I stepped into that hallway and saw her in a towel. We were simply learning how to carry it. Still, every so often, I'd wonder how close we were to breaking it all. One night I was watching TV alone when Dylan sat down next to me, a beer in hand. "Hey," he said, "I've been meaning to ask. Things cool with you and my mom?" My heart stopped for a half-second. "Yeah, of course. Why?" He shrugged. "You guys talk more than I thought you would. She usually keeps to herself." I smiled, playing it off. "She's easy to talk to. Feels like home in a weird way." He nodded. "Good. She deserves that. She's been through enough." That was the first time I truly felt the edge of the line we were towing, and it reminded me of what this wasn't. It wasn't a game, it wasn't a secret affair for the thrill. It was something two people had stumbled into when they weren't looking for anything at all and were trying desperately to protect. A few days later, I came home from a grocery run and found Monica in the backyard. She was trimming the overgrown bushes, sleeves rolled up, cheeks flushed from the sun. I stood at the sliding door for a second just watching her. She didn't notice me at first, and in that moment she didn't look like someone's mom, she didn't look like a secret. She just looked like her, real, capable, radiant. When she finally looked up and saw me, she smiled and wiped her hands on her jeans. "You just gonna stand there or help me wrestle this hedge monster?" I stepped outside, grabbed the gloves, and we worked side by side for the next hour. No deep talks, just sweat-clipped branches and shared laughter. Later that evening, we sat on the back steps with 2 glasses of lemonade. The sun was low. The world was quiet. "You ever think about what we're doing?" I asked. "All the time," she said without hesitation. "And I think I spent so long trying not to feel anything I forgot what it meant to be alive around someone." I nodded, staring at the light filtering through the trees. "I worry sometimes. About Dylan. About the fallout." "So do I," she admitted. "But I also know that people find each other in strange ways, and sometimes it's not about how things start. It's about whether they feel true." We fell into a rhythm after that, a life. Not glamorous, not cinematic, just ours. Mornings were quiet, often overlapping in the kitchen, as she sipped coffee, and I answered support tickets. Afternoons passed with her reading in the living room and me playing music softly in my room. Nights, those belonged to us in their own way. Sometimes spent side by side in silence, sometimes full of whispered laughter and wine-stained lips. But not always physical. In fact, more often than not, it wasn't about sex at all. It was about proximity, about trust, about knowing someone would be there when the lights dimmed and the noise of the world faded. One night, as we lay side by side, Monica asked, "Do you think this is sustainable?" I turned toward her. "Honestly, I don't know, but I think I'd rather have this than something safe but hollow." She nodded slowly. "Me too." We both knew it wouldn't last forever, not like this. Life has a way of pushing secrets to the surface, of demanding explanations, but neither of us were in a rush to define the expiration date. We weren't hiding out of shame. We were hiding because some things grow better in the dark. Then something changed. It was subtle at first, the way Dylan began coming home earlier, the way he looked at Monica like he was trying to read between her sentences. One evening as we sat down for dinner, the rare kind where all 3 of us were present, Dylan said, "You seem lighter, Mom. Happier." She didn't flinch. She smiled. "I've been trying to take better care of myself." He nodded. "Whatever it is, it's working." She looked at me then, just briefly, and I knew she was thinking the same thing I was, how fragile the truth was, how close it always hovered. We didn't talk about it that night, but later, as she stood at my door, eyes soft with something between guilt and gratitude, she whispered, "We have to be careful." "I know," I said, and we were. One Friday night, I came home later than usual, long shift, loud bar, too many people. When I walked in, the house was dark, except for the lamp in the living room. Monica was curled up on the couch with a blanket around her shoulders. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded but didn't speak. I sat beside her. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Sometimes," she said after a pause, "I wonder if what we're doing is selfish." "Maybe it is," I said, "but maybe that's not always a bad thing." She looked up at me. "You don't regret this?" "No," I said. "Not one moment." Her hand found mine, and we sat like that until the room tilted toward sleep. It's been several months now, and somehow we're still here, still balancing, still breathing in the space between right and wrong logic and feeling fear and connection. The thing is, no one prepares you for a relationship that doesn't have a blueprint. There's no roadmap for whatever this is, for waking up every day in a house that isn't yours next to someone you were never supposed to even notice. But I have. and now I can't unnotice her. Monica. She still reads late into the night, one foot tucked under her blanket, always with tea or wine. I still pretend to know how to cook and burn at least one thing a week. Dylan still doesn't know. Maybe he never will. And part of me wonders if that's merciful or cowardly. But what we have, it's not flashy, it's not loud, it's built in passing glances, shared silences, and quiet understanding. It's a whispered goodnight. A soft knock at the door, a second cup of coffee left out for someone else, even if they might not come downstairs. I used to think love had to be declared proven, shouted from rooftops, or written in the sky. But now I know it can live in the softest places, in the choices no one sees, in the moments you don't share on social media, in the life you build behind closed doors. And honestly, I don't know what the future holds. Maybe one day Monica and I will have to face a harder truth. Maybe Dylan finds out. Maybe we part ways with nothing but a memory and a nod. Or maybe this strange, quiet thing we have becomes something else, something even stronger, something that doesn't need to hide anymore. But for now, we're here, living softly, quietly, hours. And sometimes that's enough. If you've ever found yourself in a connection that defied expectations, that didn't follow the rules, tell me about it in the comments. Was it wrong? Or was it real? Let's talk about the quiet spaces where love lives. Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe if these kinds of raw, honest stories speak to you. We've got more coming, and some of them might just make you rethink what you thought love was supposed to look like.